I want to make one thing clear. Hasbro does not care about My Little Pony. I don't think that was true in the past, but after recent events, or within the past 5 years, I honestly think that Hasbro's position on what they care about has become solely money. I know they're a business, and I know businesses literally exist to make money, but what I mean is, I feel like their priorities have changed from what they were before to now, which is solely money. Obviously, they cared about money in the past, but now it seems like money is their only motivation and nothing else matters. But Deimos, why do you say that? What makes you think that this happened? Well, to get the answer to that, we have to look at the year 2021. In October of 2021, Brian Goldner, the chief executive officer of Hasbro, passed away from cancer. Brian had been CEO of Hasbro since May of 2008. And 2008 to 2021, that's essentially it's 2 years prior and 2 years after, essentially, of Friendship is Magic, but Brian pretty much was the head of Hasbro for all of My Little Pony Generation 4. So things for Hasbro were really good during the time that Brian was CEO. They had the Transformers movies, which were especially huge during that time. I'd say like the golden age of the Transformers movies. Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons have always been really good properties, IPs for Hasbro. And like I said, Generation 4 of My Little Pony ran for 9 years during that time, and it is obviously the most successful generation of My Little Pony. So in recent years, fans of Hasbro, especially these properties, My Little Pony, Magic the Gathering, stuff like that, they've been a little unhappy with the product that they're receiving. Now, why is that? Well, I think the answer comes down to one name. Chris Cox. This is the man who replaced Brian Goldner in February of 2022. So what exactly about Chris struck me as odd that I would just decide that Hasbro is fully focused on money now? To answer that question, let's take a look at a Yahoo Finance article from September 15th, 2024. So according to the article, here are 3 key actions that Hasbro, or Chris Cox himself, took to improve the company over the past year, so from 2023 to 2024. The company completed the sale of E1 to Lionsgate for $375 million in cash in December 2023, removing an overhang from its financials. Okay, that's fine. They sold part of their stuff and they made money off it. Hasbro is well along the road to delivering $750 million in cost cuts in 2025 as part of a restructuring plan. Now, that in particular is very important for fans of My Little Pony, I think. And to better elaborate on it, let me paint a picture. When Chris came in 2022 to be the CEO of Hasbro, Friendship is Magic was already done. It had been completed for years at this point. When Chris arrived, A New Generation, the film that was put onto Netflix, had just been put on a few months prior to him becoming the CEO. Now, logically, any business person is going to see a previous product of the same brand and compare the two. It's reasonable to believe that Chris let Generation 5 play out for a while to see if it would be as much of a success as G4 or even more so of a success. Unfortunately, as hindsight shows us, G5 was eventually canceled. Now, does this fit in with his cost-cutting measures? Of course it does. You're going to cut costs on something that's not as successful as you'd like it to be. In particular, something that's not even as successful as the previous thing that was done in the same universe. Getting back to the article, we read, Cox, who spent 14 years inside Microsoft's MSFT Xbox division, has pivoted the business hard to games. Its Monopoly Go game, a joint venture with Scopely, has grossed $3 billion in sales life to date, with Hasbro taking in $45 million in sales in the first half of this year under its agreement. Cox went on to say, "We have over 100 games in the pipeline on mobile through partnerships, and then we have several interesting joint ventures and partnerships that we're also talking about." The article goes on to say, in light of the historically high multiples paid to acquire gaming businesses, see Take-Two buying Zynga for $12.7 billion in 2022, this pivot makes a lot of sense. Cox said Hasbro is now targeting kidults, or those over the age of 13 who spend on gaming and more adult toys. The thing with My Little Pony is, one, it's never been a huge gaming thing, and two, it's never really been a thing for older kids. It's always been, first and foremost, a cartoon meant to sell toys to younger kids. The final nail in the coffin for MLP was this part of the article, which said, "But that ultimately begged the question, should Hasbro even be considered a toy company anymore, given the gaming push? I think we're a toy company in the most general sense that we're in the industry of play and we make physical things as well as digital things. But I'd like to think that we're helping to redefine what a toy company can be. To me, a toy company of the future is aged up, it's digital, and it's heavily partner-based, and I think that's been key to our turnaround," Cox said. This is really bad news for MLP fans. Because MLP has always been a toy-moving brand, more so than something like Transformers or G.I. Joe, which have successfully crossed over into live-action films, and there are video games for stuff like Transformers, and you can make G.I. Joe video games and all of that other stuff. MLP is not those things, and it never has been. So this heavy emphasis on gaming and older children kind of is an indication that either MLP will have to completely change what it is to fit this new vision that Chris has for Hasbro, or it will be left behind. And there are already signs showing that Chris has decided to leave it in the past. Now, this is an AI Google answer, but I feel like I have a bit more proof with it in a second, so I wanted to look at this right here. It says, the brand was downgraded in Hasbro's reports, speaking of MLP. By 2024, My Little Pony was no longer listed as a signature brand, in Hasbro's investor presentations indicating a reduced focus compared to higher-performing franchises like Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons. I wanted to see if that was true, so I did a little test. Alright, so I just wanted to show this and talk about it for a second. These are Hasbro's, I guess they're like websites, like their main websites. First, let's go to Hasbro. Just Hasbro. First, you could see here that Transformers is here, and that's fine. They have other really big properties, like MLP's generally probably not going to be here anyways, but you go to Hasbro Toys and Games. Toys and Games, you think, oh, Toys is definitely going to be like MLP. So you have like Play-Doh and Barbie. This is advertising their other website, which we'll go to in a second. And then you have Nerf, Super Soaker, right? You go down, you see Play-Doh, you see Beyblades, you see Furbies, you see Monopoly, Nerf, Transformers, Dungeons and Dragons, Baby Alive, and you get no MLP anywhere in here. There's no indication. Obviously, if you go to Shop by Brands, you're going to be able to see MLP in here, but this is already getting into like, okay, so we have no main page advertisements. And it makes sense. They canceled G5, so they're not really going to have stuff out and about, like, look at this, because it's just not at the forefront of what Chris Cox wants, I guess. If you go to MLP here, you get just G5 stuff, and G5 is was canceled, so obviously they're just advertising what they have left of this stuff, and that's it. It's nothing else, just a few MLP things. Here's a Misty, and here's Pip and Zip, and I guess some videos if you want to see what the toys are like, and that's it. That's all for this site of MLP. And then if you go from here, and you go to Hasbro Pulse, here you get Tron, and you get some other, like it's X-Men and Transformers and the Comic-Con, and you get like a scrolling brands. You get like Tron, you get like Transformers, Ghostbusters, Star Wars stuff, G.I. Joe. Yeah, and then here in Pulse, where it's supposed to be Ultimate Fans and stuff, you go to brands here, and you see Transformers, you see G.I. Joe, Star Wars, Marvel, Power Rangers, Indiana Jones, Nerf, Dungeons and Dragons, Avalon Hill, I don't even know what that is, Gaming, Ghostbusters, and Magic the Gathering. In here, you don't even get My Little Pony, because, like I said earlier, I guess they just don't consider it a signature brand anymore, and it got pushed even further down the hill than Avalon Hill, whatever that is. To bookend this section of the video, I wanted to talk about an image that Yahoo Finance put up on, I guess, their website in reference to Chris Cox. So it says, led the growth of gaming brands as the president of Hasbro's Wizards of the Coast, oversaw development of top games including Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, previously worked at Microsoft creating strategies for Xbox games like Halo, and managed the learning games business unit at Leapfrog. So if you look at all four of these statements, there's one thing in common. Gaming, games, and games. Chris Cox, primarily his focus after moving to Hasbro has been games, and it was his focus prior to being the CEO of Hasbro. Now, with this information, one might say, well, clearly Hasbro and Chris Cox cares about games. That's what their primary focus is on. It's not money. They're trying to push games. Here's the thing, though. Magic the Gathering is a card game owned by Hasbro. It has its own self-contained lore. It has characters. It has a storyline. It's been going for 30 years almost. It started in 1993, so 03, 13, 23, 30, like 33 years, 32 years. In 2020, Magic did a crossover with The Walking Dead, the television show and the comic book, and they made cards of The Walking Dead, characters such as Rick and Negan and the like. And this was pretty panned by the fans of Magic the Gathering, but it was a way for Magic to get more people interested in the product who weren't interested prior. Now, originally, these sets were called secret layers, and they weren't really whole sets. They were what was just shown. About 5 cards, some tokens, and you had to specially buy them off of the internet or from certain stores, game stores, whatever. They weren't full boxes full of card packs that you would buy and pop the packs open and have to randomly get cards. Now I can hear you saying, well, Dimos, this happened in 2020. That was before Chris Cox took over as the CEO. Well, here's the thing. This year, we got the popular series Final Fantasy as a Magic the Gathering set. And guess what? It was the best-selling set for Magic of all time. In its entire 30-year-plus stint of existence, Final Fantasy was the best-selling set ever. And then they released Spider-Man. And next they're releasing Avatar: The Last Airbender. And much to the chagrin of the community, we're getting 4 more Universes Beyond sets, full sets, not secret layers, next year. And remember, Chris said this, to me, a toy company of the future is aged up. It's digital and it's heavily partner-based. Yet again, I can hear people in the comments, what does this have to do with My Little Pony? Well, I'm trying to paint a picture of how Chris likes to handle any of the products that Hasbro has. The Magic player base is not happy with the direction that Magic is being taken, but that doesn't mean that Chris is going to stop the strategy because it's making a whole lot of money. Also, yes, there is a SpongeBob secret layer. So let's get back to the entire point of this video. Hasbro doesn't care about MLP. Just recently, we had the 15-year anniversary of Gen 4. So what did the YouTube channel, arguably the place where most people, most kids would watch MLP, what did they do for the 15th anniversary? Well, we got 6 compilation episodes, the 10 best episodes for each of the main 6. Okay, sure, so just something that we could have watched before. And then we got a short video with just a celebration of it being 15 years. So, basically nothing.
Also, I just want to point out the last Gen 5 thing that was posted by the official My Little Pony YouTube channel was 11 months ago.
So I thought to myself, maybe the Twitter, Hasbro's Twitter, would announce something like, Happy 15th? They didn't. Not even Hasbro's Twitter did that. However, I did find something very interesting on the Twitter. Hasbro, to no one's surprise, because Chris is Chris, launched a My Little Pony card game. Thing is, it's Chinese. But especially thing is, it's G4 branding. Now, why would they use G4 branding if G5 is the newer generation? I mean, it's obvious that Chris saw how successful G4 was and is still that successful in the foreign market, and he was like, let's make a game out of that. G5 is dead and gone, and Chris especially hates it. It's obvious, and we will almost surely never see anything having to do with it again. Which brings me to my next point. I'm going to do a little speculating here. Over the past year, all we've really gotten on the My Little Pony front from Hasbro is that card game that only came out in Chinese language. It came out in like foreign countries, or if you're in those countries, in, I guess, Asian countries. And we got an announcement or a leak of a My Little Pony live action. I find it funny in this article that they're using G5 because we all know if they're going to go by what Chris does, it's more than likely going to be a G4 movie. They're going to try and do a live action G4 movie. They're going to try and use nostalgia to try to get people to go watch it. G5, they canceled it themselves. They're not going to cancel it and then make a live action version of it. But here's my speculation, because I don't think Chris really wants to make this movie. I think the point of even leaking the movie is to make people think, oh, they're still working on something that has to do with My Little Pony. We also got the leaks of the apparent show or whatever, the G4 rewrite, this stuff. You know what I'm talking about. I don't think that this stuff will be okayed by Chris because it's not a game. I mean, maybe it will be a game. Maybe that's where we're incorrect, and it'll be a game instead of a show. Maybe like a point-and-click adventure computer game or a mobile game. It could even be a mobile game. That would actually be perfect. An updated mobile game where you collect all of the different generations of MLP characters, and you do like mini games or whatever. That could be. I could definitely see that. I don't think that this stuff will ever come to being a fully fledged generation or show because, like Chris said, he doesn't really want to focus on toy aspects. It's more game and partnerships. So anyways, with the movie, I think that Chris wants to act as if he still cares about the MLP brand, but he'd rather have it skirt along as a relic of the past that he still, quote-unquote, cares about, and he's still trying to do things with. Now, this movie will probably take, like, a few years to even be made, and the thing is companies can do tax write-offs on movies. So I think what the plan here is to just have a movie made, have it be not a great movie, have it be a financial disaster, especially for an MLP movie, because people will see it and be like, oh, that was really terribly done. And then you could just do a tax write-off on it. Not only that, but Chris would be able to say, well, I tried to do something with the MLP brand, but it failed. And on top of that, it fills time for people waiting for more MLP. As an MLP fan, and if you're an MLP fan, a lot of us are waiting for something more. We wanted more G5. Well, a lot of us didn't want more G5. I would have preferred more G5 than nothing, which is what we're getting. But a lot of us want something. Give us a Gen 6. Give us something. And with the announcement of the movie, Hasbro can say, oh, well, we're working on something. And this will take like 3 years to come out. And then if it fails or bombs, Chris can just say, oh, well, it failed, so we have to reorganize and try something else. And then he'll have another couple years before, like, we can even say, well, they're working on something. And I really think that's his aim, because that is the best way to make money off the MLP brand. The mobile game actually might make the most sense, because if he could get a small group of developers who don't have much trouble programming something like that, you make a gacha game with MLP and all of the generations, I think that that would probably be the way to min-max money. And I think Chris would look into that, especially if he's aware of games like Fate Grand Order and stuff like that. But I'd like to hear what you think. A lot of the people on my G5 Why It Failed video said that it was because of the new CEO. And that is a fair point. Chris probably was like, oh, I have no faith in that. G5 is doing terribly compared to G4. It's not a game. And they made 2 games. They made 2 games of G5, which is way more games than they made of G4. I mean, I know we got the mobile game for G4, but that's not really a game. It's a mobile game. But yeah, I could definitely see how G5 was also another factor in G5's destruction was Chris Cox. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. If you're still here, thanks for watching the video. Give me any feedback in the comments. Leave a like if you want. Leave a dislike if you want. People seem to love to do that. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one.